if you can build a good story around who you are as a developer, that's going to go a long way to actually putting you in the front of the pack.
You are listening to the Property Developer Podcast, your home for tips, ideas and inspiration to help take your developing to the next level. Now here's your host, Justin Getty.
Hello and welcome to episode 42 of the show. Thanks for joining me. I trust you're well and your projects are moving along nicely. Today on the show we are going to be talking project marketing with some great tips and ideas on how to market your next development. Before we get to that, I want to thank all the people who have contacted me asking about the property development training course I mentioned in the previous episode. It's good to see that people are genuinely interested in taking charge of their futures and tackling something they really love. I now have some further information I can share with you about the program. It is a 12-month course, accessible from anywhere in Australia, or around the world for that matter, with personal help and hand-holding to answer all your questions and make sure your first development, and each one after that, is a success. I've been through the course myself, so I'm happy to vouch for its quality and usefulness. It is run by someone I trust who is actively doing developments, not somebody who did a project 5 years ago or wants to share the profits with you. And I believe they will give you the knowledge, tools and support to become a successful developer. You will learn the essential fundamentals of developing, like how to do a quick project feasibility, what to assess when looking for a development site, getting a planning permit, choosing a builder, getting finance, and a whole lot more. You will get all the tools and resources which I've used to get me to where I am today. Things like checklists, feasibility spreadsheets, videos on all parts of the developing process, everything you need to get your development career started. It is a well-structured and well-paced course, so if you are interested in discovering more, email me, justin@propertydeveloperpodcast.com, and we can take it further. Thanks also to the listener from St. Lucia in the Caribbean who contacted me this month. It is humbling to have international listeners contacting me and thanking me for putting the show together, even if he couldn't resist having a little dig about the Australian cricket team and their ball tampering woes. We might get him on the show in the future to hear about developing in St. Lucia, and perhaps even organise a property developer podcast fact-finding mission to see what conditions on the island are really like. The photos I've seen of St. Lucia look amazing. Now, if you are like me, then you are forever interested in finding out as much information about developing as you can. And you probably like listening to podcasts. I originally started this show because I wanted to share the conversations I was having with developers, and there were no regular podcasts about property development. Well, since then, a number of podcasts have kicked off which cover property development. I thought I'd share them with you so you can check them out if you're interested. So there are 4 podcasts that I'm aware of about developing, and they are 1. The Business of Property Development by former guest Shane Hiscock. 2. The Constructive Finance Podcast by another guest, Dan Holden. 3. Development Ready Podcast by the boys at developmentready.com.au. And 4. The newest kids on the block called City Shapers by the publishers of the Urban Developer website. There is also a short 10-part series on property development by the Business Concepts Group called Property Development Podcast Show, which outlines the process of developing and some key things you should consider along the way. You can find all these shows through the Apple Podcast app or your favourite Android podcatcher. Otherwise, check out the websites for each of the shows and happy listening. As for me, I've been working on a new development site which I've agreed to buy. It has taken longer than I thought to sign the contract, but I signed up this week and it's now full steam ahead. I will have more to share with you on the next episode as it will be an exciting project to work on. As part of that purchase, I've been speaking with a number of brokers and lenders about funding options for the site, and there is a dazzling array of options to consider with various costs and interest rates. It seems there is plenty of money around to fund projects, but it can come with a high price. At this stage, we are trying to secure funding from a bank, so we will see how we go with the application. Alright, on to today's guest, Heath Thompson from Bella Project Marketing. Heath specialises in selling off-the-plan projects and brings a unique perspective to selling developments having come from a family that was involved in developing property, and Heath has even completed a number of his own development projects. I'm always interested in the marketing side of a project, as I think it's fun to bring a site to market and see how it is received by prospective buyers. There are also lots of colourful and dynamic tactics you can use to attract interest and arouse emotions. In this conversation, we cover some of the timeless marketing tactics that you should still be using, how you can get out in front of other developers, and a different way to develop a buyer profile. We even discuss how to value a quarry. I think you will enjoy this conversation, and I started off by asking Heath what food he would eat until he was sick.
Guilty pleasure KFC.
Oh!
It's a pretty basic guilty pleasure. Yeah.
I had a
simple
I
pleasures.
had a guest not long ago who reluctantly admitted to being a KFC fan as well.
Yeah.
Any particular type of KFC meal, or just?
Just the old fashioned chicken. It's pretty basic. Yeah, we keep it simple.
A friend of mine years ago put me onto the fact that you could ask them for, instead of having the potato and gravy, you could ask them just to have the gravy.
Right.
Which is awesome for dipping the chicken in and the chips. So
there's a pot of gold there for you.
Pro tip for you.
Yeah.
I only know that because I too have a soft spot for KFC.
I think we all do deep down, just whether you're willing to admit it.
Yeah, which I try and hide from my wife. Anyway, we're here today to talk about project marketing.
Yep.
Can you just give us a bit about your background, what you do, how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So, my background is in property development, I guess. So, family business. My father was a developer for many years. So, I grew up on land subdivisions and apartment developments, and sort of dinner table conversation was always about property development in one form or another. So, out of school, I went and did a course at RMIT, business property, specialising in property valuations. But it was always in the vision of going into development in one form or another. So I started working with my father and did so for about 13 years. And we built a range of projects, from apartment buildings up to about 50 apartments. We built hotels, managed accommodation hotels as well. So a big variety of projects, and my roles were everywhere from site acquisition through to town planning, management of that process, appeals processes, construction documentation, management of the construction process, right through to sales and everything else. So the whole spread of property development is basically my background. So, but really what I probably enjoyed most out of all of it, even with our own projects, was the marketing side. So when Dad sort of moves to that sort of semi-retirement phase, and I sort of was making a call really whether I gear up and getting our own investor pool and going on doing our own projects, or doing the marketing side. I decided that I was sort of really sick of having some of the battles you do as a developer with fighting councils, fighting builders, and it's just one battle after the next. So decided to go down the marketing phase. So from there, start off as a real estate agent, and to now we're working with Andrew Fall in Bella Project Marketing, and here we are.
Well, it's interesting that you did a valuation course, because I interviewed a valuer on the show, and I didn't realise how detailed the course was. Like a 4-year degree, and there's actually a lot more to it than I had previously given credit to.
Yeah, I think that's why I liked it, because it had such a broad base of knowledge for property, and it basically means when you go to almost any type of property, you've got just a base level of knowledge that you can sort of build on fairly quickly. Like we used to do subjects, we would be going out and valuing quarries, and we did rural valuations and all sorts of different property. And when I was working in hotels, just the basic line of knowledge, being able to work out income and cash flows and all those sorts of things, was all based part of that. Came from that uni degree, so it was a really good base learning.
So is that something that's helpful when you're doing due diligence on a site back in your developing days?
100%. Yeah, definitely. Just being able to do a discounted cash flow, basic feasibilities, and then more complex feasibilities. It was something actually during my my time where I had to go and do like a work placement, and because I'd done so many feasibilities throughout my work life whilst I was doing my course, the valuation team actually asked me, they got this new feasibility model, and they said, "Oh, can you teach us how to use it?" I said, "No worries." So my work placement was actually teaching the office how to do a feasibility. So it's something that's always been our strength, and something I still do a lot of feasibilities now for projects that we take on for a marketing side.
We'll get to the marketing in a second, but
yeah.
Just out of curiosity, what did you value the quarry at?
That's a good
And
question.
how
I
do you
can't
value a
remember.
quarry?
Well, it's all about
X amount of rocks.
It's all about how much you can get out of it. That's where it comes down to. It's just like any sort of valuation. It's all about the multiplier. So once you work out what that multiplier is, then you go from there.
I also have a soft spot for marketing, coming from a comms background. So,
Yeah.
what is it about the marketing side of the developing that really appealed to you?
I don't know. I think maybe just intrinsically the sales is something that I enjoy. Yeah, that sales process has always been something that I quite enjoyed. I like putting together a product which is desirable to the marketplace. So, I really, it's basically as simple as that. I just quite enjoy it.
Yeah, can you take us a bit deeper in terms of when you're thinking about something to put together, what are the considerations you're going through, questions you ask yourself, market thoughts?
Yeah, I think basically when I look at any project, from my point of view, I always think about would I live there myself, and I think if you can always bring it back to something as simple as that, trying to sell something that you don't actually like yourself, or you don't see as something that's been livable or anything like that, is always a difficult task. But if you can bring it back to something that says, okay, I actually like this. I like this property, or I like this project. There's parts about this that I could see myself enjoying my life in. That's always a good place to start. You can look at an investment portfolio and all those sorts of things. There's a whole lot of ways you can design a project to suit investors and from a financial model. But if you can always come back to whether you actually would want to live in it yourself, I think that's always a really good starting point. Investment and all that sort of stuff will roll along from there.
I thought that was always one of those mantras that property investors bang on about, not to picture yourself living in there.
Yeah, I think there's quite a few that have been burnt by that thought process, and it's quite relevant now because there's been a significant change in the marketplace over the last year and a half, particularly since probably the last 9 months since mid last year, where there's been stamp duty changes and such, which has driven a real focus on owner occupiers. And all those that have gone into those investor grade apartments, which are really designed around that financial model about maximising depreciation, maximising your rental yield, all those sorts of things that really have created quite undesirable places to live. So when it comes back on the market and your investor market's dried up, you've got to go back to owner occupiers. And if nobody likes it, well, it's not going to sell. And there goes your capital growth and all those sorts of things that you want to tie into your investment long term.
So share with us what you do now and the projects you work on, how you go about marketing them or developing a campaign for them.
Sure. So I think for us, I think our greatest strength with my background and Andrew, my partner's background as well, because we've done our own developments, I think the easiest way for us to have a real impact on a project is to get involved early. And we're finding now that a lot of architects are appreciating the sort of feedback that we can give, because it's not just about making it easy for us to sell, it's also about making it a feasible project as well, making it profitable. So the reason I say that is when we go into a new project, we'll do an analysis of the area. So from a pricing point of view, so a 2-bedroom apartment will be in X price range, 3-bedroom in certain price ranges, and we can design a project around those price points. So rather than the old way of project marketing is dollars per square metre, and it's very easy to plug $1 per square metre into a spreadsheet, and which will give you a gross realisable value at the end. But if your sizing and your product mix is wrong, you won't get that square metre rate. So sometimes you need to flip it on its head and look at the dollar value of the units, and then you can start building around a GRV that is actually feasible for the project. And sometimes the project isn't feasible. And if that's the case, we'll have that discussion with the developer early and say, look, this site really isn't a goer, maybe we should even look at selling it. But the earlier we're involved, the more likelihood it is we can actually turn to something that is feasible and works. We've got a number of instances where we've done that. We've just launched one in Brighton now, where the projects, we've reduced the number of apartments, we've increased the GRV by about 10 to 15% across the project, and it's now a very feasible project. It's high quality. The reaction from the marketplace has been very good, and it's something that meets the marketplace and what's required.
So when you talk about getting the mix right,
yep,
can you think of an example where you look at the mix and you go, it's not quite right, and what's your thinking behind that?
Yeah, it can go either way. So your product mix can be, at the moment, 3-bedroom apartments. Everyone wants a nice big 3-bedroom apartments, and the tendency can be going the bigger the better. But there's a certain point where if you go over a certain size, you start to dilute your square metre rate. It might be, as an example, in some areas might be over 150 square metres. Once you go over 150 square metres, you start getting less dollars per square metre over and above that. And the inverse can happen if you go too small, because people start looking at them as more as a 2-bedroom buyer. So if you do have a small 3-bedroom, people prefer it to be a 2-bedroom apartment. Therefore, you don't actually get the dollar per square metre. So the mix is about matching the size to the price point and making sure that you're actually in what the market is desiring in any location. And it does differ from area to area.
I was just about to ask that. So how do you go about figuring that out? Is it a combination of gut feel and market intelligence and market feedback, or is there something deeper or not as deep?
Yeah, no, we try to base all our decisions and recommendations on fact. So we're very big on market research. So we'll do a full analysis on what's currently on the market and what's previously been on the market, and also look at what's selling, because it's very easy in the marketplace to look at what's for sale and look at those as being indicative price figures, but sometimes what's for sale is not actually selling. So if it's not selling, we've got to find out why. Is it too expensive? Is it too big? Is it too small? Or what is it? What is it about that product that's not working? And then you can start to pull it apart as to what's actually desirable in the marketplace.
So you're talking about your own projects that you're selling or other projects on the market?
Well, I haven't done my own development for a little while now.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about this is what we do for other developers.
Yeah, in terms of project marketing. But
yeah,
I'm just curious, it's always difficult to find out how other projects are selling, isn't it?
Look, there's always ways.
Yeah.
We do tend to know a lot of people in the industry, and you do rely on speaking to people. It's really just getting out to the marketplace and talking to people to understand really what's happening. Because if you just spend the whole time on Google, you'll never get the real story. Yeah, you've got to dig a little bit deeper. Yeah.
Is that a contentious comment to make? Everything on Google isn't correct?
It's quite topical, isn't it? Or Facebook. Yeah.
And so, I'm curious about exploring what you do when things aren't moving. So if you find out from a colleague that X project isn't selling and they think it's because of the size or whatever it is, what, in their case, what would you suggest they go about doing once the project is up and running and on the market?
Yeah, and I guess that's where it's very much dependent on the project itself. We've had projects, one project in Richmond, big project, 140 apartments, was really designed for that investor market and sold quite well early at a range of overseas buyers and local buyers, and then it switched and became very much an owner-occupier market. We started selling more apartments to owner-occupiers, and then we got to a point where our stock level that we had left was more aimed at the investor market, but the buyers we had were more owner-occupiers, so we had to try and make changes to our stock level. So we went about having a look at which units we have. There'd be, as an example, say 2 1-bedrooms next to each other. There might have been 2 smaller 1-bedders we combined to make a large 2 or 3-bedroom apartment. And it's working within that structure. I think that's probably where my background from a construction point of view and being involved in that construction design and management process, that can generally look at a building and say, okay, here's an opportunity to combine, working around the current services layouts and services ducts, and make sure you don't muck up the structure of the building, and but still create something which is acceptable to the marketplace. So it really is a case by case, but there's a lot of, I could reel off a number of examples where we've been combining units, or turning 3 apartments into 2 apartments, or 2 into 1, and those sorts of things, just to try and get the right result.
And what about other incentives? Are there kind of packages that you find work, or is it trying to squeeze blood out of the stone?
Incentives are an interesting one. Often, what I find is when you're offering incentives, and there's a lot of big incentives in the marketplace, whether they be rental guarantees are pretty standard sort of one and blinds packages, which everyone knows, but there's some big commissions that are offered, sort of behind closed doors to a lot of different agents. We get offered, up to 9%-10% commission sometimes, to sell an apartment. But I look at it and go back to the old thing. Would I want to buy that apartment? And more often than not, in that case, the answer is no. It's either not a good layout, or it's overpriced, or something to that effect. So if you need that sort of incentive, it's generally there's something intrinsically wrong with the product. So what we tend to do is more focus on trying to get the product right, get it priced right, and then that's no longer a problem. I think off market, there's always incentives to investor channels and such, which are sort of part of the business. But when you start getting into the real sort of upper echelon of all these crazy cashback scenarios, rebates, massive commissions, all that sort of stuff, it generally means that intrinsically there's something wrong with the project.
All right, so let's jump back to projects that are good, intrinsically positive. You've had your fingerprints all over them, or you've had a look at them and think, yes, this is good.
Yep.
Take us through the campaign development and what you start thinking about beyond the floor plates or the floor plans once they're locked in and you're happy with them.
Okay, so from there on, it's, I guess, whilst we're designing those floor plans and floor plates, we're talking about what our buyer is. So it's almost like building that avatar. You hear often a lot of sort of social media context and what have you, but it's about building what your typical buyer is. So if it's a downsizer, we're looking for someone who's come from a substantial home. They're used to having a good sized living space. They want a master bedroom which is going to fit the sort of things that they're used to. They might have a proprietary piece of furniture, chest of drawers or something they want to bring along with them. So it's about making sure that master bedroom has the space for that. It's got adequate wardrobe space and a good size ensuite. So you'd want to make sure that's got room for a king size bed and all those sorts of things. You want to be able that buyer to envisage themselves having their children, which are generally older children now, coming around for dinner, grandchildren. Where are their grandchildren going to sleep? Those sorts of things are about the sort of thing we need to be thinking about in our marketing and how we attract those buyers. So it's about that story behind the project, as to what's inside the project, but then you also look about what's outside the project and the location. So whether it be the standard things being public transport and shopping and those sorts of things as well. But if you've got something unique, like for example in Brighton, this project, it's in the Martin Street Village, so it's got this beautiful sort of village culture. And within Brighton, it's quite rare. Everyone thinks of Brighton of being Church Street or Bay Street and quite sort of big centre strips, whereas this has got that real nice little sort of urban culture, which is very, very much unique to the area. So it's about running off the back of that. It's very easy when you're in Bayside to say beach, sand, water, boats. It's very easy to go down that line, but if you pull it back and really look at what the buyer wants and is actually going to be attracted to in that area, it's more about that that little village lifestyle. So it's very much dependent on where you are and what the project is.
So when you talk about having an avatar, and you use the example of the downsizers,
yep,
I prefer to call them right sizes.
Yeah.
Looking to right size their properties
yes.
for that stage in their life.
Yep.
And you talk about they picture themselves with the children and the grandchildren and the big pieces of furniture.
Yeah.
But how do you go about then triggering that in your campaign material or in your copy, or what tools are you using to trigger that?
It's some really simple things, and I think really what most people want is on those floor plans. It's in that detail. So, all the pretty pictures and everything are wonderful. Everyone's used to seeing pictures of school zones and cafes and coffees and a lovely, breakfast, the smashed avocado sitting there on a plate, all that sort of stuff.
You can only use that for the older demographic.
Exactly,
you can't use it on the kids anymore.
Exactly. So, but everyone's used to that. Everyone's seen it. It needs to be there because it looks great. But everyone expects it. Everyone just flicks through it. So it's about what actually has meaning to it. So the meaning is in the detail, in my mind. And my again, I always draw on my technical background because that's my strength. So I'm talking to people about how the building's built. I'm talking to them about what makes a common wall so that you're not going to hear the neighbour next door. When we do a floor plan, I always make sure that if we have space for say a 6 or an 8 seat dining table, you show a 6 or an 8 seat dining table. Don't do a little 4-seater. If you've got space for a large lounge suite, show a large lounge suite, demonstrate it. Or a king size bed, actually draw it there on the floor plan, so you can demonstrate this is what we're thinking and this is how you're living and we're thinking about how you live. So that's really, I guess, the hard bit to demonstrate in a brochure. You can't, but that's when someone comes into a display suite, you need to be able to show that.
So I wanted to ask your views on inserting people into renders.
Yeah.
Yes, no.
I don't really have a view, to be honest.
Yeah.
I get the idea. It's about getting perspective. So it has a purpose in that sort of instance. But I don't really have a view as to whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's just horses for courses, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know people always say you sort of ostracise a particular group potentially if they're not included in the render, but I think it adds some dynamism and activity if you can get some humans in there doing something. But
I think really the biggest advantage of that is demonstrating scale. So we've got a person which is a 5'10" person. It just gives scale, and that's really probably the greatest strength of it.
And in terms of tactical pieces that you would include in your collateral suite, are there any stock items, or are there things that you're now bringing online or that you're bringing into the mix that you think are working? Yeah,
look, I'm pretty traditional in the way we work, and as far as our marketing goes, like a good quality brochure, flip book, a display suite is a huge part, I think, in the current marketplace. If you can provide a good display suite which helps you demonstrate scale and helps you demonstrate the quality of what you're doing, and I think it also gives you an opportunity to stand by your product as a developer. So if you've got the confidence to put it out there, this is what we're doing, it gives the buyer confidence that that you're willing, capable, and able to put it all together. It also demonstrates financial capability to put that there, because I think a lot of people in the current marketplace are worried about the financial strength of developers and other. The financial landscape is not an easy one at the moment.
Yeah, I might come back to asking you questions about which developers you choose to work with or that you like to work with, but I'm just keen to explore further the common questions that you'll then get from prospects or prospective buyers when they're coming in to the suite, for example. What are the general things they're asking about? Yeah,
the most common questions really are about the development team. It's because you can go into any project now and everyone's got marble or nice stone, everyone's got Miele appliances, everyone's got all the the same sort of bits and pieces. Everyone will say their floor plans are the best. Of course ours are, but everyone will say theirs are the best. Everyone will say their location's the best and what have you. So there's all those sorts of things which are really common across a vast array of projects. What really makes you stand out is that attention to detail and is that strength of your development team. So whether it be your architect, your builder, the developer themselves, development manager, all those interior designer, everyone who's involved in actually bringing that project from where it is there at that stage, it's got a permit, it's got a interior design, it looks wonderful on the renders, to actually getting it there as a finished product. Who's actually going to make that happen? And that's such an important part at the moment. I think a lot of people forget. So if you can build a good story around who you are as a developer, that's going to go a long way to actually putting you in the front of the pack.
Yeah, because I would have thought for you as a professional marketer, there's a reputational risk there for you as well if you're going out bringing something to the market, putting your name next to it, and then the finished product is significantly different or different enough for buyers to be a bit grumpy.
Well, it makes it look like we've misled them.
You're copying it.
Yeah, we're very conscious of that, and it's very easy, I think, in real estate to have a short-term goals. You can say, I want X amount of sales now, and it's all about getting as much income in as you can, which we're all about doing. But at the same time, you've got to look long term, because if you think too short, you'll have a very short career, because you can't just keep churning stuff out and assuming everyone's just going to expect it, and they expect rubbish, and you give them rubbish, and your name is going to get dragged down with it. So if you can tie yourself with good projects, good developers, good teams, and bring out good quality products, and then you're associated with those ongoing, then that's really the way you build a longer term career.
And so then how do you go filtering or determining which developers you work with, and what are the things that you're looking for?
Yeah, well, a lot of it starts with that basic feasibility at the start, making sure the project actually stacks up. So unless I can do a basic feasibility on a project and see that it's actually got a profit margin in it, we're talking very much basic feasibility, but if at that stage it doesn't stack up, well, I know the bank's not going to lend money on it, so it's going to be very difficult for that developer to get funding to build the project. And that means I'm selling apartments to people who are going to have a deposit sitting there for 4 years, and whilst the sunset clause ticks along, and at the end they're going to be disappointed. So really it all starts with that. So if it stacks up, then great, and then we go to the next stage. And then the next stage is who they are, what sort of background they've got, what sort of builders are we talking to, and architects and development managers and everything else. What's that team? I do the same thing as any buyer would do. Who's actually going to deliver this to the finished? And if it's got gaps in it, well, can we help them fill the gaps to make sure that the team has the right stuff to get there to the end?
Okay. And then going back to campaign materials, so we've touched on the traditional, I guess, printed collateral. What about digital stuff?
Yeah.
What are you doing there? What are you recommending? What are you seeing emerging?
Social media is a big part of it. Big part of advertising with Facebook, Instagram, Google AdWords, and those sorts of things have been around quite a while. But the old dropping the cookie when you inquire on something and being able to follow your buyer around the web is really a big part of what we're doing now. And I think that's having a pretty significant effect on print media, because it's a lot easier to track at what's where your spend's going, where your inquiry's coming from, and it's flexible as well, rather than with print media, which certainly does still have a place. But with print media, it's very much you put it out there and you're hoping, and it's very hard to track where your money's going. Traditionally, you put a print ad out, you might say 2 or 3 weeks later you start getting sales coming in. You say, well, okay, there's been a peak on the back of that. Whereas with social media, you can see very directly where the inquiry is coming from. If a certain image is performing better than another, then you can swap, you can make changes, and it's very much real time. And the volume of inquiry is quite a lot higher. And so is that a combination of stills and video, or what sort of assets are you putting out there into the social media pond? Yeah, it's very easy as a project marketer to say you want to spend more on marketing. So you want videos, you want 3D, and you want everything, because it makes your life easier. But in the end, it's about working to a budget, which is, again, all comes back to that feasibility. So we can say, spend $500,000 on marketing. Is that what we need to spend? So it's about having a budget which is appropriate, and then you're working around that. So it is very much dependent on the project. Big projects, bigger budgets, so you throw more at it. You might be spreading it over a longer timeline. A smaller project, the focus may be to try and sell quickly, and that again comes down to the developer as well. Are we looking for fast sales? So that's a mixture of price and marketing. You've got to go in on that. Or if it's a longer sales campaign where we're going to be more patient, well, let's look to sort of spread it out further. So it is very much horses for courses again.
And so there are a couple of tactics that are at the top of the tree that you just immediately go, we've got to do X, Y, and Z. And what would they be?
Well, the big ones are always, you've got to be on realestate.com.au, you've got to be on Domain. They're the two major platforms, you've got to be there. It's just a matter of, what you do within those platforms. And there's, a raft of options available. So, they're pretty good at, providing you another way to spend some more marketing money. So, it's about, managing where you get the best volume, and social media at the moment is a lay down misere. You've got to be on it in one form or another.
And then a campaign website or a project website?
Yeah, websites are important, depending on what, again, scale and budget within the project. So smaller projects, you can, sometimes you can get away with just a landing page, which is, directing to inquiry, and then you follow it from there. Bigger scale projects, you need to put more information on there, and it's more about showing more about the development team and all that sort of stuff as well. There's always the catch 22, how much information you put out there and how much you want the buyer to come to you for. So there's always a balancing act there of giving enough but not too much, and vice versa.
And what about video? What's your view on that?
Video's a tough one, because it's kind of like a brochure. It looks fantastic. It often doesn't give you the detail that you want, and that's the thing from a buyer's point of view. What are they actually going to get out of it? So often a relatively cost-effective video is using the renders, fading in, fading out, and a bit of movement, bit of music, and some lifestyle shots and everything. It's pretty easy to put together a relatively cost-effective video. If you're doing something which is fairly groundbreaking in a new area, and you need to go beyond that, that's probably where the video becomes more important, because you need to try and, I guess, show that vision. So again, really very much project specific. I wouldn't say video is vitally important, but it can be useful if done properly.
And then what about getting the developer or some of the project team speaking this is in a video? Do you see value in that?
Sometimes, yeah. Depends if they're any good at presenting.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah.
And that comes down to the confidence in the developer and such. I've got some developers who love doing interviews, and we do a lot of work with our PR company as well, so that we getting interviews through whether it be the Age, Financial Review, or Urban Melbourne, and all these other platforms. So we do a lot of work there, but it really depends on the willingness of the developer to be able to do that and how important their brand is to them. So some developers, the brand is very much important. They're building a legacy, so getting out there and is all part of what they want to do. I've got others who just don't want to do it. So it can be quite useful.
And you mentioned budget. Have you got any rules of thumb, percentages of the project, or anything like that?
I guess an old rule of thumb was sort of 1.5% of the GRV, so the gross realisable value. That's a pretty good rule of thumb as a starting point, and then you sort of work back or forward from there. Generally back. So it's really it's a game of compromises. Really, it's just how much you can compromise and get the result you need, and it all comes down to speed of sale. But I think most developers recognise that the best time of the project is when the project's fresh to the marketplace. So it's about getting the best value you can out of that launch period.
And what is it about? What do you enjoy about working with developers?
Yeah, what?
Sorry, there's a presumption there that you do. What is it about them that you find not appealing, or what is it about the personality or the types of developers? Maybe that's a better way of doing it.
Yeah, look, I think in my makeup is kind of development. It's just been there for as long as I can remember. So for me, not to be involved in development in some capacity would be a pretty strange outcome for me. So look, I enjoy. I enjoy troubleshooting. Is probably a simple way to put it, because I like working ways to make things better. I like working around a problem. If we've got a buyer who says I can't go ahead for whatever reason, I want to get rid of that reason and make sure we find a way to make it happen. And in today's marketplace, it's a much tougher position. So being able to work around those problems is probably what's setting the difference for us at the moment, whether it be a finance or it's a layout or whatever else. We're having a lot of times where a buyer will come and say, no, I'm not going to go ahead. And then a couple of days later, we found a resolution to the problem, and we've got a sale. So, I guess that's really part of it.
Yeah. So you see developers also being problem solvers, and they're good to work with in that respect, or is it something different?
Well, like everything, it's personalities. Some are good, some are bad, some are easy to get along with, some are really tough, and it's all about that itself could be troubleshooting, troubleshooting your personality. But I think in general, if you're all along for the ride to the same goal, and it's part of building that team. I've got I love team sports and all those sorts of things. So building a team is a really important part, and development is very much about building a team. And if you get that team, everyone's on the same path together, it's all going to the goal. The goal is the project's finished and sold out, and that's the premiership flag. So it's all about going for that. So for me, that's my level of excitement. Bring it all, helping to bring it all together, play your role in actually making a successful project.
What about some of the things that developers do that cause you consternation or have you pulling your hair out?
Well, I think developers intrinsically have a mindset of a go-get-em sort of attitude, and it's always often bucking a trend. And there's a lot of, I think, if you understand the development process is butting heads a lot of the way. It's a lot of confrontation. It's a lot of battles. It's really moving from one battle to the next. And I think if you don't understand that part about the development process, you'll always find yourself butting against developers are probably not really getting anywhere. So I think if you understand what's trying to be achieved, then you'll get there. But that's I guess the greatest challenge is understanding what they need to achieve out of their project. Because some developers it's about protecting asset value, and others it's about just getting rid of them and moving on to the next one. So what's their focus? That's the greatest challenge. I think generally once you've got that, things you get on the same page and move forward.
All right. Casting your mind back over your career, can you think of moments or times when we got that wrong with the marketing, and what was it? What did you learn from it, and how did it improve things for you in the future? Yeah, well,
exactly everything I've just said about developers, I did as well. So I sat there and said, "Of course I'm right. I'm the developer. I know what I'm doing. I'm the one here. It's battling, butting against council and builders and everything else. And I've put all the work, and mine's better than anyone else because it's mine. I did it. So that's I think what I've learnt is that sometimes you get so much in your bubble that trying to take feedback can be the greatest hurdle. So if you can pull yourself out of the bubble and step out and say, okay, now where do I sit in the world, so to speak? Where is my project? Am I really as good as anybody else? Are there competitors out there that are better than me? Are they cheaper or whatever else? It's about really just understanding your place or your project's place in the market. If you can do that, that's, I think, really probably the most important starting place for any project.
And so the things that you're very focused on now, or much more focused on from a marketing perspective and a project marketing perspective?
Yeah, so I guess there's two points. Is market research, making sure that pricing is right relative to what the project is and to the competition, and making sure your layout's right as well. Those two parts, everything from there should flow relatively well. if you get those two bits right. So
How do developers get the pricing wrong? Is it just because of the aspirational desire to achieve a certain level? It's not really based in reality, or
well,
why would they start thinking like that?
It's really easy on a spreadsheet, and I've done this. I've done this myself plenty of times. Where you sit down there and you look at your spreadsheet. Okay, so this is what it is, and when you get emotionally invested in a project, the numbers look different to you as to what everyone else does. It's that bubble. You get caught in this bubble of your project, and you go, "Oh, if I just squeeze this a little bit here, squeeze that a little bit there, my price goes up just a little bit more," and you see the way it affects the bottom line. You go, "Oh, that's pretty attractive," or "That's where I need to be." That might be where I need to be for a funding purpose, or it might be to cover a land purchase, which I've stretched just a little bit too far. So there's a number of different reasons. It could be planning. You've gone through planning and the permit you've got's not quite where you want it to be, but you still need to maintain your revenue out of that. So what am I going to do? So it means probably your price has gone up, or have you been, if you've lost a level through the planning process, does that mean your basement's got to change and now you're putting car park stackers in instead of on-grade car parks, and how's that affecting your price? Instead of saying, okay, I've got stackers in there, but my price stays the same, knowing that the market, what you're presenting to the market is different. So there's a lot of moving parts, and it's understanding that when you go through that process, that your feasibility changes as the process changes your model. And I think that's the hardest thing about development. There's a lot of things there that are out of your control. So.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned to me previously how you'd given some input to a developer about their proposed scheme that you didn't think it would get through at council, but they pursued it anyway.
Yeah.
And it failed, and then they came back to you and you gave them some ideas about something and a scheme that might work a bit better and be more attractive to council.
Yeah, well, I think, again, having been involved in so many applications, you can see, sometimes you can just see what's going to happen before it happens. And in this case, it was a project that was, the initial application was, I think it was 27 apartments, and the car park was a single level basement with car park stackers, and they were very small apartments. It was very much it was almost a yield study, the way this design was. So it was getting as many apartments in there. More apartments means more revenue, and that was kind of just looked like that was the philosophy behind the project. And we looked at that and said, well, one, from pricing this project up is very difficult, because I think the product you're providing nobody's going to like. And we were as brutal as that, because they needed to hear that. And the other thing was, from a density point of view, I think there's too much density in the project. So from a council point of view, I don't think they're going to like it either. So you've got too many units in there, not enough parking. It's all crammed in. And I said, there's every likelihood you're going to go through this council process and you're going to get knocked back. And I said, what I'd like to do is, if you could appoint us to work with you, we'll give you some guidance, and we think we can not only get something which is more palatable for council, but we'll create better revenue. And I said up front, we think we can increase the revenue by 10%. And there was us and other agents they were talking to. We all agreed what the current value of that project was, and we said that's what it's worth now. But if you do this, we'll get a better result for you. So anyway, they said, no, we want to get a permit first. Went to council, they got knocked back. When I heard of their decision, I gave them a call and said, look, before you go to VCAT, let's submit amended plans to VCAT, and hopefully we can get it through on a mediation rather than to go to a full hearing. So they said, okay, all right, you're on the team. So we came in, we sat down with the architect, had quite a few meetings, gave a very different design brief. The 27 apartments became 15. The car park went to a 2-level basement, so it was all on-grade parking, which was a significant expense, but our revenue was going up to cover it and a bit. The quality finish went up, but it all made sense. We're sort of cost managing the process as well. And then sure enough, went to VCAT, had a mediation, got council on side through the mediation process, and they came out with a permit. So they don't all work perfectly like that, but that's the sort of input we love being able to put in. So when they do get their permit, one, they actually get the permit, and two, they come up with a product which is ready to go to marketplace rather than have to redesign afterwards. So, yeah, that's the theory behind it all anyway.
It's always nice when it works out.
It is nice when it works, yeah.
So tell me, what's the best piece of advice or wisdom that you've ever received, or something you've learnt along the way?
Well, I think probably it's stepping out of that bubble. And if stepping out of the bubble and doing your research and understanding where you sit in that marketplace, wherever it might be, and that could be in a range of different scenarios. It's not necessarily just in development, but in life. If you step out of your own bubble, we all get caught in our own little worlds. So if you can step out of your own little world for a second, just see where you sit in the world, then that can often give you some good perspective and help you make some better decisions. So that's generally. My wife's very good at actually helping me give perspective. She's a nurse, and she sees some pretty tough things in life. So whenever you have a bad day, come back and have a chat to my wife Sophie, and she'll generally set you pretty straight.
Keep you grounded.
Yeah. I think you realise that your problems aren't generally that big.
Yeah, that's right. I actually remember travelling when I was much younger, and I'll never forget seeing some kid come going past me on a skateboard with no legs and just pushing him along with his hands, and I thought, my life's never going to get as bad as what that kid's going to have to go through in life. So that's a good grounding thought at times when it's all swirling around and it seems pretty difficult.
Yeah, exactly. And we complain our coffee took too long to come out. There's much bigger problems out there. So
if you could go back in time and talk to a younger Heath,
at
what point in time would you go back to, and what would you say to him?
Oh, I think if I was going to go back, I'd probably go back to my early 20s, which I think probably a lot of people would say go back to there, because you're all full of vigour and and ready to take on the world. But I'd say probably to believe in yourself, because sometimes you can be led down certain paths by certain people and what have you. So I think sometimes it's again stepping back and just sort of assessing the scenario and believing in yourself. Because I think if you do that, and you don't just take the sheep-like mentality and follow along, that sometimes you make a better decision. So, yeah.
And if you could sit down for a meal with any three people, alive or dead, who would they be and why?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I've thought about this quite a lot. I've agonised over this question, but I brought it down to three. I think Barack Obama. I'd love to sit down with him, just for someone who has an absolute command and presence of wherever he is. I watched an interview with him recently with David Letterman, which is just fascinating. Just a fascinating man. I'd also like to meet. I'm a mad St Kilda fan. I'd like to sit down with Robert Harvey. Reason being, Robert Harvey is someone who's just a brutal commitment to what he was doing, and a work ethic I think second to none. And I think that sort of work ethic is, I think, what we all say we want to do and whatever else, but to actually do it, I think is another thing again. And then another one was Lane Beachley, which I think for a woman in very much, she was a pioneer in a man's world of surfing, which is generally a very much an accepting community anyway. But what she did. World titles, again and again, and consistent performance over such a long period, I think is a very difficult thing to achieve. So that's a pretty admirable quality.
And what do you reckon you've learned about yourself along the way?
You don't know everything. So it's again, take yourself out of the bubble. Just understand where you sit in the world, and people have got. There's a lot of good advice out there if you'll sit back and listen to it. So I think what I've learned about myself is that whilst I've got some good assets, good qualities, and a good skill base, if you understand the things you don't know, I think that's when you really get the best out of yourself and the others around you. So, yeah.
And your top tip for developers out there to help them take their business to the next level?
Listen to good advice. That's the hardest bit. And it's really easy when you're investing so heavily, whether it be your own money is often the case, and there's a lot on the line when you're a developer. being able to trust someone else's advice is very difficult because there is so much on the line for you. So being able to build a good team around you that will give you good advice is probably the greatest asset. And again, knowing what you don't know, and acknowledging that and using that to fill the gaps. Because if you fill those gaps with good people and good skills, that's when your development team will really grow. You can't do it all yourself. You just can't. You can't be a town planner, a builder, an accountant, a solicitor, an engineer. You can't be all of it. So understand what you are good at and then fill the gaps. Fill the gaps elsewhere.
As Donald Rumsfeld would say, the known unknowns.
Exactly. Yeah.
They're easy unknowns.
They're easier to find than you think. Yeah.
Well, Heath, where can people find out more about you if they're interested?
Yeah, well, you can always give me a call. Give me my mobile number. It's 0408 314 756, or on our Bella website, bella.com.au, and through the project page there. So we're not too hard to find. Google is generally a pretty good way to find us too.
Is there an intriguing reason or story behind the name Bella Project Marketing?
Well, Bella actually started way back when with Nathan Bella, and that's where it started. Andrew Fall bought that business off Nathan, and so on and so forth. That's 20 odd years ago. Yeah,
very good.
So it does have quite a long history in the area.
Well, Heath, thank you so much for being on the Property Developer Podcast. I'm very grateful to you for sharing all your information and ideas with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
See you later.
Cheers.
Okay, there you go. I trust you enjoyed that conversation with Heath. I think he shared some good insights into how you can approach marketing your next development. There are a couple of things that stood out for me, including 1. Develop avatars or buyer profiles. Figuring out who your likely buyer will be is a great way to consider what will appeal to them, and then lead you to develop materials that will attract them to your campaign. Heath gave the example of retirees or people moving out of the family home and into an apartment. He said they would be thinking about spending time with their kids over dinner, or having grandkids stay over, or may have nice pieces of furniture they are bringing from their previous home, so larger bedrooms or living areas may be appealing. Whatever you think they may want or like that your project provides can then be incorporated into the campaign materials. That may be a graphic of a 6-seater dining table on the floor plans, or showing a king-size bed in the master bedroom. All these things can feed into the idea that their needs have been thought of, and you have been thinking about how they might live. So it is moving beyond simple lifestyle amenity in the local area, though you should still consider those elements as part of your campaign materials. 2. Have a great team. This comes up regularly, and I think as markets soften, it will become more important to differentiate yourself from the competition. And the members of your team should be able to give you ideas and suggest details that will give you an edge or provide more value to buyers. Having a team of quality people, be it the builder, architect, or interior designer, is also a great way to build up confidence with prospective buyers. If you are using trusted brands or good quality people, it can present a winning team to the market, and it may put you in front of the competition. 3. Take a step back and look at the bigger picture. I think this is wise advice, and sometimes when you are deep in a complex issue or trying to solve a seemingly insurmountable problem, you can't see a way out, or your view of the world is clouded. At these times, it pays to pause, take a step back, and think about a grander scale, or reflect on what your mission and purpose is. Getting some perspective and breaking out of the bubble can help you refresh your approach or discover a solution. Having trusted advisors is a great way to sound out ideas, talk about the problem, and figure out a response to the situation. Okay, that's another episode almost done. Don't forget to email me if you're interested in learning how to become a property developer, justin@propertydeveloperpodcast.com. And if you enjoyed that conversation about marketing, then check out some other past episodes of the show, such as episode 39 with marketer Tim Reed, or discover how to harness the power of visual imagery with Stan Zaslavsky in episode 16. You can also find all the past episodes of the show at www.propertydeveloperpodcast.com, and you can see all my latest property development photos and videos on Instagram and Facebook at Property Developer Podcast. So, until next time, may all your marketing be helpful and emotional.
You've been listening to the Property Developer Podcast. Tune in next time for more tips, ideas, and inspiration to take your developing to the next level. For more developing love, make sure to visit propertydeveloperpodcast.com.